Justin, thank you. Please tell Hank we said hello. All right, let's go out to the movies. Las Vegas Weekly film editor Josh Bell is here. You know what that means. It's time for the Bell Breakdown. There it is. Hello. Number one here, Battle of the Sexes.
Yes.
This looks great.
It is. I mean, it's very good.
Okay.
Maybe not great, but it's very good. It's been talked about a lot as a potential Oscar contender, thanks to Emma Stone and Steve Carell, who are the stars of this movie. It's the true story of the tennis match from 1973 between Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs. Billie Jean King, who was a feminist trailblazer fighting for equal rights in tennis for women.
Yeah.
And Bobby Riggs, who was a self-described male chauvinist pig, came up with this kind of publicity stunt of them playing a match against each other. And the movie is not just about a tennis match, though.
Yeah.
The match itself takes place kind of towards the end of the movie, and it's really a character study of these two very different people. Riggs, who's kind of washed up, but he's desperate for this attention. He needs to get back in the game.
Who was in his day a legit tennis player.
Right. But he's at this point in his career where he's kind of faded from memory, and he's got this gambling addiction, and he really needs to be back in the spotlight. And then Billie Jean King, again, fighting for the rights for female tennis players. And I think it's a really interesting character study of both of them, and that it's not just marking time until you get to them playing against each other, and by the time they do play each other, you really understand what's at stake. So I think this is a very entertaining take on this story, and sometimes it's maybe a little on the nose about what it all means, but the acting really carries it through.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, I think if you're like me, you grew up in the 70s and 80s, you grew up knowing about this match, and it certainly helped define and shape the landscape when it came to women in sports. So I'm interested to see it on a number of levels, that being just one of them.
Yeah, and it really gets across that importance of what it did mean for women in sports and for the culture at the time as well.
No question. All right, number two here. This one is for Miss Roselli. She's starting to clap right now. American Made. This also looks good. I feel like last week we had two movies that weren't so good. This week we got two movies that to me look excellent.
It's a better week. Another true story here, although I think this is very loosely based on the true life of Barry Seal, who was a pilot who worked both for the U.S. government and for the Medellin Pablo Escobar drug cartel in the 1980s, smuggling drugs back and forth to Central America and also smuggling information for the government about the Sandinistas and the communist rebels. And this movie takes a very loose, comedic approach to his story. It's indebted a lot to Goodfellas with the way that it has this kind of jazzy, almost rock and roll tone to it, and you got the narration from Tom Cruise as Barry Seal, who's not a good guy. He's this morally compromised character, but at the same time, he's fun to watch. He's entertaining. It's a little glib about that, but I think it's an entertaining take on the story and the 80s drug trade that we've seen in a bunch of things recently, but it puts a slightly different spin on it. If you like Tom Cruise, this is one of his better performances recently.
And I think for the record, the CIA is denying any connection.
Of course, of course.
Which makes it that much more intriguing. All right, there it is, ladies and gentlemen, the Bell Breakdown. There you go. Thank you, Josh, for your time. I appreciate it. We'll be right back, everyone.